You know what I never thought to question for the first 25 years of my gardening life? Buying seeds. Every February, the catalogs would show up. I'd get excited. I'd spend $50, $60, sometimes over $100 on seed packets, and I'd do it all over again the next year. It never occurred to me to ask why I was starting from scratch every single spring. Then I got to know an Amish family in Lancaster County, Pennsylvania, and I noticed something that stopped me cold. They had a wooden cabinet in their mudroom with dozens of small glass jars and paper envelopes, each one labeled by hand. Tomato seeds from 2022. Provider beans, originally from her grandmother. Bloomsdale spinach, saved 11 years running. They hadn't bought seeds in over a decade, and their garden was outproducing mine by a wide margin. The plants were stronger, germinated faster, and seemed to shrug off problems that would have set my store-bought varieties back for weeks. Today I'm going to walk you through exactly how the Amish save seeds from their best plants every year, how they dry and store them properly, and how this simple practice can save you hundreds of dollars while producing a garden that actually gets better with every season. And stick around to the end because I'll share a technique they use to test seed viability in late winter that takes the guesswork out of what's worth planting and what needs to be replaced. I'll be honest with you. For most of my gardening life, I assumed seed saving was something only serious homesteaders or survivalists worried about. I figured commercial seeds were the best available, that the professionals had it figured out, and that my job was just to pick the right varieties from the catalog. But when I started looking at what Amish families in Lancaster County and Holmes County, Ohio were doing with seeds they'd been saving and refining for generations, I realized I'd been overlooking one of the most powerful tools in gardening. What I'm about to share isn't about rejecting commercial seeds entirely. It's about understanding why saving your own gives you advantages that no catalog can match, and how adding this practice to what you already do can transform your garden over time. Here's the core principle behind Amish seed saving, and it's so simple it almost sounds too obvious. When you save seeds from the plants that performed best in your garden this year, and you plant those seeds next year, and you repeat that cycle year after year, you're building a seed collection that is custom adapted to your specific soil, your specific microclimate, your specific growing conditions. The Amish don't have a fancy term for this. They just say you save from the best. But what they're doing is exactly what plant breeders call selection pressure, and it works. Every garden is different. Your soil pH, your drainage, your sun exposure, your pest pressure, your frost dates, the specific fungal and bacterial populations living in your ground, those are all unique to your property. When you buy commercial seeds, they were bred to perform reasonably well across a broad range of conditions, but when you save seeds from the plants that thrived specifically in your yard, you're selecting for genetics that match your conditions. Over 3 to 5 years of doing this, the difference becomes obvious. Germination rates go up, plants establish faster, disease resistance improves, and you stop spending money on seeds that may or may not be suited to where you actually garden. The Amish have been doing this for generations, and it's one reason their gardens seem to perform effortlessly while the rest of us wrestle with varieties that weren't bred for our backyards. Now, before you save a single seed, you need to understand one critical distinction, and this is where a lot of well-intentioned gardeners get tripped up. Not all seeds can be saved successfully. The difference comes down to two categories: open-pollinated seeds and hybrid seeds. Open-pollinated varieties, which include all heirloom varieties, produce seeds that grow into plants essentially identical to the parent. If you save seeds from a Brandywine tomato, you'll get Brandywine tomatoes next year. If you save seeds from Provider bush beans, you'll get Provider bush beans. The genetics breed true from generation to generation. This is what the Amish grow almost exclusively: heirloom and open-pollinated varieties that have been maintained in their communities for decades, sometimes much longer. Hybrid seeds, on the other hand, are created by crossing two different parent varieties to produce specific traits like disease resistance, uniform size, or higher yield. The resulting plants can be excellent, but their seeds won't come true. If you save seeds from a hybrid tomato, the plants you get next year will be unpredictable. Some might resemble one parent, some the other, and some might be nothing like either. You'll end up with a jumbled mess instead of a reliable crop. Here's the practical takeaway. Check your seed packets or catalog listings. If the variety is labeled as hybrid or F1, those seeds cannot be saved reliably. If the variety is labeled as heirloom, open pollinated, or OP, you're good to go. When you're starting out with seed saving, stick entirely with open pollinated varieties. Tomatoes, beans, peas, peppers, lettuce, and herbs are the easiest crops to begin with because they're mostly self-pollinating, which means you don't have to worry much about cross-pollination from neighboring plants. The Amish keep it simple. They grow open pollinated varieties, they save from the best, and they've been doing it so long that their seed collections are perfectly tuned to their land. The second step happens during the growing season itself, and it's something the Amish do that most home gardeners never think about. They don't wait until harvest time to decide which plants to save seeds from. They watch their garden all season long and mark their best performers early. Here's what to look for. You want to save seeds from the plants that are the healthiest, the most productive, the most disease-resistant, and the earliest to mature. Not just the biggest tomato or the longest bean pod, but the entire plant's overall performance. An Amish gardener I know in Holmes County ties a short piece of red yarn around the stems of her best plants in midsummer. By harvest time, she knows exactly which ones earn the right to provide next year's seeds. Think of it this way. Every plant in your garden is auditioning for next year. The ones that germinated strongest, grew most vigorously, resisted disease without intervention, and produced the most abundant harvest are the ones whose genetics you want to carry forward. The ones that struggled, got sick first, or produced poorly, those genetics get composted, not saved. This is the selection pressure I mentioned earlier, and it's remarkably powerful over time. In your first year of seed saving, the improvement is subtle. But by year 3 or 4, you'll notice that your saved seeds germinate faster, your plants establish more quickly, and your overall garden performance improves in ways that feel almost effortless. You're not doing anything magical. You're simply letting your garden tell you which genetics work best in your specific conditions, and you're listening. One important note. Always save seeds from multiple plants of the same variety, not just one. Saving from at least 6 to 10 plants of the same variety maintains enough genetic diversity to keep the population healthy. If you save from only one plant, you risk inbreeding depression over time, which can actually weaken your seed stock. The Amish typically grow enough of each variety that this isn't an issue, but in a smaller home garden, make sure you're selecting from several strong performers rather than just a single standout. The third step is where the actual seed harvesting happens, and the technique depends on what type of crop you're saving from. There are 2 basic categories, dry-seeded crops and wet-seeded crops. The Amish handle each one differently, and getting this right is the difference between seeds that store well and seeds that rot in the jar. Dry-seeded crops include beans, peas, lettuce, herbs, and most flowers. These are the easiest to save because the seeds dry right on the plant. For beans and peas, simply stop harvesting the pods you want to save and let them stay on the plant until they're completely dry and brown. The pods should be papery and brittle, and you should be able to hear the seeds rattle inside when you shake them. In zones 5 through 7, this usually means leaving them on the vine until late September or early October. Once the pods are fully dry, pick them, shell the seeds out by hand, and spread them on a screen or plate indoors for another week to make sure they're thoroughly dried. For lettuce, let 1 or 2 of your best plants bolt and go to flower. After the tiny flowers fade, feathery seed heads will form. Wait until the seed heads are dry and fluffy, then snip them into a paper bag and shake gently. The tiny seeds will fall to the bottom of the bag. For herbs like basil, cilantro, and dill, let the flower heads dry completely on the plant, then strip the seeds into a container. Wet-seeded crops include tomatoes, cucumbers, melons, and squash. These require an extra step because the seeds are surrounded by a gel coating that inhibits germination and can harbor disease. The Amish method for tomatoes is simple and effective. Scoop the seeds and gel from your best ripe tomatoes into a small jar or cup. Add about an inch of water, stir, and let it sit at room temperature for 2 to 3 days. You'll notice a layer of mold forming on the surface. That looks unpleasant, but it's actually the fermentation process breaking down the gel coating and killing seed-borne diseases. After 2 to 3 days, add more water, stir vigorously, and pour off the mold, pulp, and any floating seeds. The good, viable seeds will sink to the bottom. Rinse them in a fine mesh strainer, then spread them on a plate or screen to dry for 1 to 2 weeks. For peppers, the process is even simpler. Let the pepper Ripen fully on the plant until it's deep red, orange, or whatever its mature color is. Cut it open, scrape the seeds out, and spread them to dry. No fermentation needed for peppers. For squash and cucumbers, let the fruit stay on the vine well past eating maturity. A seed-saving cucumber should be large, yellow, and almost overripe. Scoop the seeds, rinse off the pulp, and dry on a screen. One thing the Amish are careful about with squash is cross-pollination. Different varieties within the same species will cross-pollinate freely. If you're growing both zucchini and yellow crookneck, which are both the same species, their seeds will be crossed and won't come true. Either grow only one variety of each species, separate them by at least a quarter mile, or learn to hand-pollinate, which involves covering female flowers before they open and transferring pollen by hand. For beginners, the simplest approach is to grow just one variety of each squash species for seed saving and enjoy the others purely for eating. If you're finding value in learning how the Amish build self-sustaining gardens through seed saving, take a second to subscribe. I've been digging into these traditional methods, and there's a lot more practical wisdom coming. Now let's keep going, because proper drying and storage is what makes the difference between seeds that last 1 year and seeds that last a decade. This is the step where a lot of first-time seed savers make mistakes, and it's one the Amish are very particular about. Proper drying is everything. If you store seeds that still have moisture in them, they'll mold, rot, or lose viability within months. Fully dried seeds can last for years, sometimes a decade or more, depending on the crop. Here's the rule the Amish follow. After you've harvested and cleaned your seeds, spread them in a single layer on a plate, a paper towel, or a fine mesh screen. Set them in a warm, dry, well-ventilated spot out of direct sunlight. A kitchen counter, a mudroom shelf, or a covered porch all work well. Let them air dry for 1 to 2 weeks, stirring or flipping them every couple of days so all sides dry evenly. The temperature should stay below 95 degrees Fahrenheit. Higher than that can damage the embryo inside the seed and kill viability. Here's the visual cue the Amish taught me that takes all the guesswork out. Pick up a seed and try to bend it. If it bends, it's not dry enough. If it snaps cleanly in half, it's ready for storage. This is called the snap test, and it works for virtually every type of seed. Bean and pea seeds should be rock hard and impossible to dent with a fingernail. Tomato seeds should be completely flat, papery, and brittle. If there's any give or flexibility at all, give them another few days. One mistake I made early on was drying tomato seeds on a paper plate. They stuck permanently to the surface, and I lost half the batch trying to scrape them off. Use a ceramic plate or a piece of window screen instead. The Amish use old window screens propped between 2 chairs, which gives airflow on all sides, simple and effective. Once your seeds are thoroughly dry, storage determines how long they'll stay viable. The enemies of stored seeds are moisture, heat, and light. The Amish store their seeds in glass jars with tight-fitting lids, paper envelopes tucked inside sealed containers, or small cloth bags kept in a cool, dark cabinet. The ideal storage temperature is below 50 degrees Fahrenheit. A basement shelf, an unheated closet, or even a refrigerator works well. Here's a trick several Amish families I know use to absorb any residual moisture. They drop a small packet of silica gel or a tablespoon of dry powdered milk wrapped in a piece of tissue into each storage jar. The desiccant pulls any remaining moisture out of the air inside the jar and keeps the seeds bone dry. Label everything clearly: variety name, the year saved, and any notes about the plant it came from. The Amish are meticulous about this because when you're managing a seed collection that spans dozens of varieties in many years, you need to know exactly what you have and how old it is. How long do saved seeds last? It varies by crop. Tomato, pepper, and cucumber seeds stored properly can remain viable for 5 to 10 years. Bean and pea seeds typically hold strong for 3 to 5 years. Lettuce and most herb seeds are good for 3 to 4 years. Onion and parsnip seeds have the shortest viability, usually just 1 to 2 years. The Amish rotate their collections accordingly, using the oldest viable seeds first and replenishing with fresh saves each season. The final step in the Amish seed saving system happens in late winter, about 6 to 8 weeks before planting season. Before they commit a single seed to the garden, they test germination to make sure their saved seeds are still viable. This takes the guesswork out of spring planting entirely. Here's how to do it. Take 10 seeds from each variety you plan to plant. Lay them on a damp paper towel, fold the towel over, and place it inside a sealed plastic bag. Set the bag in a warm spot around 70 degrees Fahrenheit. Check it every 2 to 3 days and keep the towel moist. After 7 to 14 days, depending on the crop, count how many seeds have sprouted. If 8 out of 10 germinate, that's an 80% germination rate and your seeds are strong. If only 4 or 5 sprout, you'll want to sow more thickly to compensate. If fewer than 3 germinate, it's time to replace that variety with fresh seed. The Amish do this every year without fail. It takes about 15 minutes and a handful of paper towels, and it completely eliminates the disappointment of planting a whole bed with seeds that barely come up. Let me share some patterns I've noticed in how most gardeners handle seeds compared to the Amish approach. The first is buying all new seeds every spring. The average home gardener spends $50 to $100 on seed packets each year. Over 10 years, that's $500 to $1,000 on something the Amish get for free. The second is growing mostly hybrids without realizing they can't be saved. Many popular varieties at garden centers are hybrids. There's nothing wrong with growing them, but if you want to save seeds, you need to deliberately choose open-pollinated varieties. The third is saving seeds from random plants instead of the best ones. Tossing some tomato seeds on a paper towel in September isn't the same as deliberately selecting from your healthiest and most productive plants all season long. Selection is what makes the genetics improve over time. The fourth is storing seeds in a hot garage or a damp shed. Heat and moisture destroy viability faster than anything. Cool, dark, and dry is the rule every time. Now here's something I picked up from an Amish seed saver in Holmes County that I think is brilliant in its simplicity. Every fall, after she finishes processing and storing her seeds for the year, she takes a small pinch of each variety and puts them together in a single envelope labeled with the year. She calls it her test envelope. In February, instead of opening every individual jar to run germination tests, she pulls out that one envelope and tests everything at once on a single damp paper towel. Each variety gets its own row on the towel, labeled with a tiny pencil mark on the paper. In 15 minutes, she's tested her entire seed collection for the year. If something fails the test, she knows exactly which jar to replace. If everything passes, she hasn't opened or disturbed any of her stored jars, which keeps them sealed and dry for maximum longevity. I started doing this 4 years ago, and it's turned what used to be a tedious late winter chore into the simplest task of the season. That's the kind of efficiency you get from people who've been refining these methods across generations. That's what I've learned from studying how Amish families build self-sustaining seed collections that save them hundreds of dollars a year and produce gardens that get stronger every season. Choose open-pollinated varieties, select from your best plants all season long. Harvest and clean seeds properly for each crop type. Dry them until they snap. Store them cool, dark, and dry, and test before you plant so you never waste a bed on dead seeds. These are simple skills that any gardener can learn, and once you start, you'll wonder why you ever paid for seeds you could have grown yourself. If any of this changed how you think about seeds and where they come from, I'd love to hear about it in the comments. Tell me which crops you're going to start saving from this year. Hit subscribe if you want more of these practical lessons from traditional growers who figured this out long before the rest of us. Thanks for spending some time with me today, and I'll see you in the next one.